Now it's recording. So we're not missing any of the good questions.
All right.
All right.
Perfect.
So those are his questions. Okay. That was his question. You got the gist of it?
Yeah. So if it's strengthening your hips and your, I'll call it mobility and flexibility for breaking people's posture down. So a lot of times that's going to be that hip flexing motion like this. I'm assuming is what he's talking about when you're in someone's closed guard and you're trying to break down their posture. Yeah, I see him nodding. So, you know, I think what happens a lot of times is people get really obsessed with the exact muscle that's actually operating there. So, while you do want to make sure the psoas and all the muscles of the hip flexors are strong, you also want to make sure that your core is very strong and your posterior muscles, like in your upper leg, are quite strong too. So your hamstrings, your glutes, but to make sure you're not having flexibility or mobility problems, it really starts in the core. I actually deal with this a lot with people, especially people who tell me that they get pain in closed guard or feel like they have no strength or mobility there. It's that first motion of the breakdown needs to come from your core, almost like a crunch. And then the hip flexion and everything should follow. Like in terms of just good movement mechanics, that's where that starts. So you're going to want to make sure, I mean, do you want me to like list off some quick exercises or
just do some like really, broad brisk that he can do. And then after we'll go back to it. And I think your gift at the end actually will help a lot of people on what they need to be doing going forward. I think actually Jamie, and you know who he is, I think Jamie works with Pablo. So
cool.
You could, let him know, certain things that he could be doing and that he could tell Pablo about.
Yeah. I mean, I know Pablo through you. We've never met in person, but yeah, definitely you could put us in touch. But yeah, it's for me, any of that hip flexion motion all starts in the core. So what I would avoid for now, but then I would work into once you feel like, or you and Pablo feel like your core is where it needs to be, is I would avoid doing like sit-up motions where your feet are tucked into something. So like doing things on an incline bench or doing things on a GHD or like where a partner holds your feet. Don't do that right now because that's going to encourage you to use too much quad, too much hip when you want to be working your core. Now, I should also preface this all by saying I haven't seen or assessed you, but these are overarching themes I usually see. So sometimes either I'm wrong or your movement patterns show me something differently. So I would say, things like planks, side planks. I like standing crunches a lot where you put a band or you put the pulley up on a cable machine really high and you crunch and make sure you feel everything in your anterior core, but nothing in your hips and doing motions that way. I like hollow body holds, dead bugs, things like that are all good exercises to start. And then work into the GHD sit-ups, the feet tucked sit-ups, incline bench, or decline bench, sit-ups, all the while working on your posterior. So like Romanian deadlifts, even deadlifts, like forward walking lunges. But I probably am going to guess with your rehab for your knee, that's going to take a little while before you get there. So things like that.
Cool. All right. So we have another question. I believe it was Tom. Next, I'm going to go back to the group, make sure I read it right. All right. So the question was, maybe it was Kelly. Tom, I have you. Well, no, Tom was actually before Jamie. I'm sorry, guys. We'll get to all of them. Okay. So Tom said, I lift weights 3 times a week. I only do 3 lifts, bench press, deadlift, squat. I also do body weight, TRX, kettlebell on off days. I'm also in law enforcement.
Awesome.
And field strength is just as important as BJJ training, which I think Mark would agree.
Yeah,
My
definitely.
question is, should I dedicate 3 days to lifting or should I decrease or increase? Let me just give you Tom's background. Tom, how old are you? 46.
46.
Okay.
Cool.
Tom's 46. He's in law enforcement. He lifts 3 times a week. He comes to jiu-jitsu usually 2 to 3 times a week, sometimes a little bit more. What would be your suggestion for him?
I mean, honestly, I would love it if more guys in jiu-jitsu lifted 3 times a week. So I think you're already doing great there. Um, I I actually am a big fan of squat, bench, and deadlift as like the base for um, strength training for jiu-jitsu, especially if that's something you're used to and you like doing, because um, I think squats are great for not only your balance and proprioception. I'm assuming you mean back squats. Yeah, so I love them because they build so much strength. As you get, I mean, once guys are past 35, you want to think about, exercises that give you good bang for your buck to keep your testosterone high, and optimal levels. I think squats and deadlifts are great for that. Something I realized when I was doing when I started doing a lot of squats about 2 years ago is that my base on the mats got so much better. And then retroactively, I started reading more books about it. And there's guys like famous NCAA strength coaches in all different sports who write in journals that they believe that it's one of the best movements for reactivity. So in other words, when you do a squat, you're starting at the top, you go down and back up. So you have that eccentric first, and then you create power to come out. Whereas in a deadlift, you have to create power from the start to get it off the ground. And being able to reverse that strength kind of in one full rep from the start. So eccentric load, pop up concentrically. It's really good for all of these like other athletic qualities that are really important in jiu-jitsu. So I know I'm rambling on a little bit, but that I really love squats, and I never take for granted when a guy comes in and is like, I love back squats, I'm good at them, and I'm doing them. Because most guys who train jiu-jitsu, and even guys that are 21, their back squats are so bad, and it takes me so long to get working with them on it, but it's such a great exercise. So I would say make sure you're doing that and doing it safely. So as long as you never have pain, as long as you do it well, keep doing it. But three times a week is great. You asked about kettlebells and some of the other stuff you do and TRX. Is that on the same day you train those things?
The days that he doesn't do the weight training.
Oh yeah. I mean, that stuff's great too, because in reality, like body weight, kettlebells, all that stuff is all about your, like what I would call GPP and sort of general movement. So like, the better and more efficient you are with kettlebells, it's the reason so many people in jiu-jitsu love them so much. The movements are so similar, if that makes sense. Like a lot of times I see like a lot of strength and conditioning protocols for jiu-jitsu involve like 1,000,000 kettlebell swings and like 1,000,000 pull-ups and like whatever it is. And it's like, it's great stuff, but it's so similar to jiu-jitsu that it's like, yes, it helps, and it helps keep you loose, and it puts you through the movements as you want to be without someone fighting back at you, which also is important to do some from time to time. But it's not, I don't always think it leverages things in the best possible way. Like I think for your overall health and like overall male health, deadlifts and squats are a lot better than that, and I think if you can do them. Now, if you can't do them, which you can, but just for other people listening who are like, damn, every time I deadlift, my back hurts. There's regressions, and we can get into those later, but things that can help you, things that I find really important. So I would keep that up. I mean, without seeing your exact program, the brief parameters you gave me are great. I think that works really well. Yeah. And Charlie probably wants to see you at jiu-jitsu as much as possible too. So I think any more than 3 days a week would be asking a lot. So yeah.
All right. Awesome. Now we also have a question from Kelly. Kelly, the whole family trains with us also. She's on here, and she has a question of, let me see her exact question. I want to make sure I say it right. And I applaud her. She just had, they just had a baby, I think. Correct
awesome.
me if I'm wrong, Kelly, and then Mark, you correct me if I'm wrong. 6 weeks ago, Kelly, is that right? Shake your head, yes or no. 5 weeks ago? 8 weeks ago? 9 weeks ago? 8 weeks ago? 9. Okay, 9. 10. 8.
I see at least 8 fingers. Yeah.
8. Okay. So she just had a child
Awesome. Congrats.
8 weeks ago. She was back in kickboxing like 2 weeks ago, man. Unreal. Like she's back training. So I really want to give her a round of applause for that
Awesome.
because, my wife has had a child and coming back from something like that is not an easy task. So she is a super warrior. And I think that will
Yeah.
go into her question here. And Mark, and I know, tell me if I'm wrong, that the way that we train, is it postpartum women who have just had a child, things change in their training
Yeah.
than if they were to not have had a child in such a short amount of time. Yes?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So her
Yeah.
question is, and then this will be really good because she'll get specific on this and you can give her advice. Any
Right.
suggestions for strength training exercises for women? I train with my fiance who is 50 pounds, who's 50 pounds more than me and would love tips on what I should be focusing on that will give me an advantage when rolling with him.
Yeah. Well, anytime we can get competitive advantages over our spouses, that's helpful. But when you actually recently in the past year, I can't remember exactly how many, but I've trained a number of women postpartum, and I hadn't done it in a lot of years, and it was actually a really fun way to program because it's really important that you get your core really strong because it all starts with your core. So you're going to want to make sure you are doing like the baseline movements. So if you've never done a dead bug before, I would look it up, and there's a million variations of it because the basic dead bug is pretty easy, but the longer you hold that position, it becomes very hard. And then from there, there's all kinds of progressions, like doing, opposite patterns of your arms and legs. You can even hold weight in your upper body, bringing it over your head, things like that. Like that's something that those patterns, the dead bug and then the bird dog, I don't know if you've ever done that one before, but it's basically like the same thing. You're just on all fours and you eliminate two posts at the same time, usually the opposite. You've probably done those before, right, Charlie?
Yeah, man, they're tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Steve
Yeah.
likes to do them on his feet instead of his knee, and then you have to like hold it. It's super tough.
Yeah. So there's a lot of progressions to those things. So I start every workout. I started every workout with this one particular client I'm thinking of with those movements. And as she mastered them, which was actually fairly quick, especially if like you're back at kickboxing already, like obviously you have some athletic aptitude. So like you'll get these pretty fast probably. So, just have progressions in mind, like starting on your back with the dead bug, then the alternating pattern of the arms and legs. Then maybe you can add a band to your arms while you do it. So you have to pull down, like have your husband or someone behind you hold the band. So it creates tension. And then working on the bird dog too. That's huge because really what you want to do is you want to be able to really brace your spine. And then you want to be able to flex your core in the appropriate way. So going back to that first question, you don't want to be using like your hip flexors when you should be using your core. So I used a lot of movements with a lot of core movements. I mean, it's like the first 15 minutes of the workout. And sometimes this is something I learned from Charles Poliquin. That is, if something's really important, you should train it twice in the workout. And there was a French word for it. He called it like double training or something like that. I think that was how they said it. And he would basically, if core is important, you get your first 15 minutes and your last 15 minutes. So in the middle of the workout, 20 minutes is going to be the other thing that day, whether it's upper or lower body. So that's what we did a lot of. If you're in kickboxing and things are going pretty well, like keep doing that and keep doing the core training, and then make sure you're just balanced in every other way. Keep your back training up. I would keep deadlifts out of the equation probably until 8 weeks. So you're 8 weeks out. So, you're going to have to kind of trust yourself with that one. The only reason I say keep deadlifts out is it requires a lot of bracing power through your core. So you want to make sure your core is kind of in a good spot. Maybe at least 6 weeks of like a solid core program. And then you could maybe do lighter deadlifts. You could work in Romanian deadlifts. Like I do a lot of hinging with people off the start. The difference being with the Romanian deadlift, you could take a kettlebell or a dumbbell and you start at the top and then you come down, just below your knees and you come back up. That'll train your glutes and your hamstrings, which is also really important. But yeah, the core is key, is very key.
And Mark, is there anything that she should completely avoid at this time to stay safe, to progress, into the hardcore stuff, like you said, the deadlifts and all that? Is there anything that like she should just be like, you know what, you should steer completely away from that for like the next month or two?
Yes, that's a good question, actually. It's anything that you can't control with basic core flexion. So in other words, like if you were hanging from a pull-up bar and you couldn't control your core, like you couldn't like kind of do like a little baby crunch or a hollow body, that would probably be bad. So like anything that's like too overextending, like that's going to really pull you out too much. You want to do that kind of stuff, like take a foam roller on the ground and lay on it, like your spine on it, and just open up your arms and legs and kind of let your head come back, but do it under extreme control. So something like a pull-up or anything off rings right now would probably not be ideal. Like in the first, in your first like 8 weeks back to training, maybe 6 weeks. Yeah.
Cool.
This is just general rules of thumb.
No, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. We want to make sure that everybody's safe and they can get the most amount of training. And I think me and you have talked about this before.
Yeah, definitely.
Where, if you're hurt all the time, then you can't train.
Yeah.
We use our conditioning and strength stuff so we can be on the mat more, not reverse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's how I look at all this stuff too. A lot of us have different preferences for where we'd rather spend our physical life, like our physical activity time that we have. And a lot of people involved in jiu-jitsu, it would be like almost all jiu-jitsu. They want to be always on the mats. And I get that. I totally get that. But you're going to make your life so much happier if you take like 2 or 3 of those hours a week and devote it to something to keep your body up.
Cool. All right. So Mike has a question. I really want to work on my grip strength. What exercise would you recommend? And I thought that was a good one because I'm curious too. I've seen a lot of different stuff. What do you like?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. My favorite one.
What do we have? Because I think a lot of people are trapped at home, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do we have in the house? Or can we order that you're like, this will definitely help and it's really easy to get?
So if you have, and you guys don't mind doing it, I guess if you wash your hands a lot before, but you can do all those old rice pail exercises. Have you ever seen those before?
Yeah, I used to do those.
Yeah. Those are actually the best, like poor man's, like.
Explain what it is.
So if you could take a bucket or just some type of
bucket.
Yeah, like some kind of large container, and you dump, 10, 15 pounds of rice into it. You want to be able to submerge your hand like all the way into it. And you can do all kinds of like gripping of the rice, like going like this. You can do all types of different like hand patterns, like screwing in a light bulb. If you Google this, I'm positive there's people who have blogs devoted entirely to like rice, whatever you call it, grip training. I used to do a lot of it too. There was this disgusting bag of rice at this rock climbing gym I used to go to years ago that all the climbers would just stick their hands into.
Let's cook it.
Yeah, exactly. It was like brown, but it probably started white, like that kind of thing. Those are cool. Anything, a simple thing you can order. I almost make everybody, and I know you know this because you did it, is I make everybody order a pair of fat grips when they start training with me, because it's like they're $30, $35. And you can put them on. Yeah, you can put them on dumbbells. You can put them on barbells, pull-up bars. Right now, with everyone stuck at home, like I put them on bands to have a handle on some banded movements sometimes. You basically want to bake your grip training into everything you do, except maybe like the big movements. So like if you're like bench pressing and like you're trying to bench press 225 for reps or like 315 or something, you don't want to put fat grips on that. You want all your muscles to go like that need to go in there. But if you're doing like lunges or you're doing split squats with dumbbells in your hand, like passively. That's what I have almost everybody do. Like I almost always make them do that. Like lat pull downs. If you're stuck at home right now, anything you can attach it to, you could put those on. I'm sure if you're into it, like in true Steve Maxwell fashion, you could make your own, like, cause that's like something him and I used to do all the time, was make stuff, like out of nothing, like go to Home Depot and get PVC pipe that was like, double the diameter of a standard barbell or dumbbell. And you could attach it to like suspension devices or whatever, those are the easiest ways. Just bake it into anything you're doing. The next best thing is probably, like taking your gi. Like people do the gi pull-ups all the time, but you could wrap your gi around a band and attach your band to a stable fixed point and do rows, holding the gi sleeves, things like that. Cause I'm guessing everybody has a gi or jiu-jitsu belt in here. So you could totally use that. And yeah, I like just farmer's carries too. Like when I was younger, I had a horrible grip and I used to just do farmer's carries all the time, like in the gym, because this was like, I don't know, this was when the gyms you went to were just dirty and smelled and just were like iron gyms, and you could just you just had to pick up heavier dumbbells than you had. But I know right now that might be kind of tough. So, if you have a kettlebell, I've been doing a lot of kettlebell farmer's carries with a 24 kilo kettlebell in my backyard. Yeah, that's probably the easy way to put it.
Cool. Mm-hmm. I'm going to check if there's any more questions. And then if not, you guys can put some in the chat here. So there's a chat box. Please, if you'd like for Mark to answer a question, you can type here. Like if you look to the right-hand side of your window here, it says chat, and then people can type in there. So guys, make sure that you put your questions in there if you have one, okay?
Yeah, I tried to censor myself too because I like to talk a lot. So you can always ask me to follow up on stuff.
Yeah. All right, let me check back to the questions here in the Facebook page. And if we don't have any, I have a couple for everybody. Well, for you.
Sure.
To answer for everybody. All right, so I don't see any more back on the Facebook page. So I'll check again in our chat. Guys, if you want to ask a question, make sure you put it in the chat. If not, I'm going to ask mine.
Sure.
All right. So Mark, my question is kind of for everybody. What is the minimum amount of days that you would suggest folks that are training jiu-jitsu who are recreational / competitive sometimes, how many days a week would you suggest that they lift? Let's just make like a vague thing, because I know this is really dependent on the individual and their age.
Yeah.
And do they have a full-time job? Do they have kids? They don't play that all into
because it always depends on what your stress levels are like, and stress comes in many forms. So the short answer is probably going to be 2, like almost across the board is kind of the minimum of days you should devote to your physical practice, like strength training, that type of thing. The reason is I'm a big fan of doing upper and lower days. I don't like to do a lot of full body work. I think that once you get to a certain strength level, and it's not even like all that advanced, it's just once you're kind of probably like 6 to 9 months into training regularly, with weights or otherwise, like you're going to be getting sore. So like I don't like getting the whole body sore at once, because then you get subsequent workouts. So I know that means that you probably hit certain muscles a little bit less, but I like 2 days a week. Going back to the point that you were making though about stress and whatnot, like even people who are professional athletes and they do a lot of training all day long, and you can probably attest to this from when you trained MMA full time, like you don't have a lot in the tank to like then go to the gym and do more work. So it's actually really counterproductive. And that's like when you get into different aspects of sports science and you start to leverage like well, what quality could we bring up that won't pull one away? But that's not like most of us. So, and even me, like, it's not really relevant. It's just, you want to consider, like, if you have a pretty stable job that's not demanding a crazy amount of hours to you, like, just remember your jiu-jitsu factors into all that training too. So, if your stress levels are low, you can generally train more. If your stress levels are very high and you have a lot of other responsibilities, you're probably going to have to, like, figure out how to manage that in order to train more or keep up your current training load. Like, when I opened my, like, my studio over the summer, like, I was doing so much work preparing for that and going in all the time, like, that I was like, I had to cut back on my training. Like, I couldn't train as much jiu-jitsu as I was used to because I just couldn't recover from it. I could feel it. I could feel my body hurting all the time. I just felt dumb and slow. And, you know, I had to cut back one jiu-jitsu day and another strength training day. So it's like, if things get really busy at work, sometimes you have to cut back your training, or sometimes busy with the family, you have to cut back a little bit in order to make those sessions count. But then jiu-jitsu and martial arts, like, this is the longer answer, like, that's community for a lot of us. So you have to be very honest with yourself and say to yourself, well, yeah, I want to go see my friends after work, you know, at jiu-jitsu rather than the bar or wherever else. But, you know, I'm going to go just, you know, I don't know how your classes are always structured, but maybe I roll, or maybe I don't roll that night, or maybe I do one round, take one off, but not go in the war for like 30 minutes of rounds every single night. So, and then for people who like jiu-jitsu, just, it's more of a thing that they come and do 2 or 3 times a week, like, center all of this around that. And then those 2 days of training, strength training, you're at 5 days of doing something pretty difficult. That's a good healthy schedule. Like, if we could get more people to do that, we'd be a much healthier country. So, like, that's 5 out of 7 days a week. That's pretty awesome. So you shouldn't poo-poo yourself over that either.
Mark, how long is the maximum amount of time that you suggest folks to be working out? And also, in the same question, should people be lifting until they can't, like, rep or set wise, until they're just, like, basically seeing the wolf in the sky and, like, their eyes are popping out of their head? Like, should we be doing that? How long should the lift be? And should we be hurting ourselves while we're lifting?
Well, you should never be hurting yourself when you lift. Like, if you hurt yourself at jiu-jitsu, that's kind of supposed to happen. But, like, if you hurt yourself at, and I'm kidding, of course, but if you hurt yourself in the weight room, like, you or I are doing something severely wrong. That shouldn't happen. What you asked was a much more detailed question about, like, sets, reps, how hard I should go. What was the first part of your question?
That, because individually that changes per person, per goal.
Yeah.
We all know that. Just like,
so time in the weight room though, that's a really good question. I tell most of my clients, like, almost everybody, if you're in the gym over an hour, you've been in there too long. Like it needs to make it count while you're there. Like, don't, like, you know, dilly daddle around. Like, go and do the work you need to do. If you're on a good program, they'll usually prescribe rest or give you some indication to it. But, you know, don't exacerbate that rest interval. Like, push, you know, like, make it count while you're there. That actually was really well studied in the Soviet Union in their sports science program, that they found the optimal time was, like, between 55 and 57 minutes to be training, like, strength training, that is.
That warm up and cool down too, or is that the whole?
Maybe the cool down was excluded, but included the warm up. That from the moment you started elevating your heart rate, it was counterproductive. And the way they measured that was they tried to find indicators of cortisol in the body and figured out when it got too high. In other words, like,
right.
But it was counterproductive. But, you know, it depended also on, like, your sport. So, like, if you're a power lifter or a weightlifter, you might be training a little longer because that's your sport. So you're doing skills work. So it might go to an hour 15, but they try to keep it really condensed. And I think that's a good rule of thumb for just about everybody.
Cool. So no more than 57 minutes ish. And then the minimum could be a half an hour.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It becomes semantics at a certain point too, because it's like, what's a warm up to somebody? Like a lot of the warm ups I do are pretty tough. Like, once we get out of like a quick stretch or, quick activation, whatever little drills you need to do, like I don't count that in the time. But once like the warm ups I do, I usually have people do between 2 and 4 exercises in a circuit, and it's not heavy, it's not hard, but we're moving and we're doing it in about 13 minutes. So
Cool.
yeah, I'm big on, the more serious you are, I always keep like a watch on and I'm always keeping time on what people are doing. I keep like a real close eye on rest. It's not CrossFit. It's just like, rest is an important interval. It's just like weight, reps, sets. Like you need to keep an eye on how much you're resting too.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So we have another question here. James wrote, I want to add stretching to my workouts. I'm 28 years old. I lift 3 times a week and train jiu-jitsu kickboxing at least once to twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
When is the best time to stretch? Before workout, after warm up, before warm up, after workout. So he trains jiu-jitsu kickboxing at least
Mm-hmm.
once a week, sometimes twice, and lifts 3 times a week. When's the best time to stretch? Are the workouts making him tight though? Is that what it is?
Maybe. I mean, the thing is like, that's like that old boxer thing where boxers thought that lifting would make them slow. Like, no, it's basically the stretching. It is pretty well studied, but also you kind of have to go with what's in front of you. Like if you're really tight and you have to like start kicking a bag or start, doing like pummeling warm-ups and all this other stuff, you're not going to feel good. I know that. I've gone into so many practices before and just felt like complete trash, like from being so tight. And I just like even just on a simple pummel drill, every time a shoulder hit my shoulder, even though it was a warm up, I was like, oh. So I sometimes am like, hey, if you're feeling tight, you might need to stretch a little bit before practice. A lot of times people always say, do it after because it'll weaken you. That data and that study, if you've ever heard that before, that like you get weaker if you stretch before you do something hard, it's for weightlifting and powerlifting. So yeah, maybe you don't want to like stretch before you put like a 300-pound bar on your back, but you might want to stretch before you go and train jiu-jitsu or kickbox. But the bigger thing is, so in other words, like the short answer is, how do you feel that day? If you're feeling really tight, yes, work on your flexibility, mobility before, make sure you make time before. But afterwards often is a good time to stretch also, because you're quite warm and you can kind of get into the stretches. But stretching is like, I don't know, like it's not something I overly advocate for a lot of times, like just because I think if you pay attention to a lot of like good mobility practice, and like Steve's a great resource on this, and you do the maintenance. So in other words, if you can get up and do like a 10-minute walk here and there 3 or 4 times a day, if you can do those, like I said, the little Steve drills, your posture and everything are just going to feel better. So I would challenge you to do that more and watch your desire to stretch go down. In other words,
Mark, I have something to add. So the way that I structure classes
mm-hmm.
are very similar to the way that Marcelo structures his classes. Like we have a warm up.
Mm-hmm.
I do include more, a little bit more mobility than he did at his workout. I do incorporate a lot of Steve stuff.
Cool.
So we warm the body up and then we do a ton of mobility before we start working out. And then we'll do some like drills, and then they do drills, and then we do live rounds at the end. So those mobility drills help. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's a really, if you start Googling, you can kind of go down some rabbit holes, but there's a lot of people who believe that when you sit and try to wrench yourself a little too hard in some of these stretches, that you're not usually stretching the muscles, you're actually just really pulling on your joints. So, it takes a lot of body awareness to understand like how to stretch properly in the first place. I can't remember the authors, but there's a book called Stretch to Win, and it's all about like PNF stretching. PNF is like contract, relax stretching. So it either requires a partner or like a door frame, something for you to push against. Like that stuff is really effective. Like I've used that like to great effect before. But I think just in a general sense, like if you have to sit a lot, like I noticed that like being at home now, like being forced to be at home, that, you know, typically in my day, I move around a lot, but late in the past week or so, week plus, you know, I've been sitting a lot more. So before I go to work out, I have to do a little bit more to get warm. And it's always the Steve stuff. It's always like, let me walk around. Let me, you know, loosen up the shoulders, probably all the stuff you do in class, things like that. But I'm never like caught just like doing that. You know what I mean? I'm always kind of moving around a little bit. And then it helps because I noticed that I just jumped into a workout the other day from sitting and I didn't feel great. So like, and I understand that's a lot of people. A lot of people are going from work to going to do that. So it's something to consider that like you might like for, if you stand a lot and you work in more manual labor, maybe law enforcement, if you're up moving around, like, yeah, you might be able to just jump into a workout a little bit easier than somebody who's been sitting for 8 hours, that kind of thing.
Cool, man. I think we answered any other questions. Guys, any other questions? Make sure you put them in the box. If not, we're going to end our session and then we're going to ask Mark where we can find him on the internet. And we have a special gift for all of you who have attended this webinar. Okay. Mark, why don't you just talk about, tell the viewers who you train in New York City at Marcelo Garcia's, because we went there together. We talked. I know who you train. Mark trains some of the best people in the world at jiu-jitsu, top guys.
Oh, no, thank you. Well, the two guys I work with the most from Marcelo Garcia are Marcos Tinoco and Mateus Lutis. Marcos has been a black belt now for, I don't know how many years, but he's podiumed at Worlds at black belt, like in consecutive years. He was the top 10. He was a top 10 ranked IBJJF fighter, like in their final, rankings at the end of 2018. Really good teacher too. And then Mateus is interesting because as a brown belt, he started going on that new super fight scene. So like all those events like Kasai and all those things like that. And he was beating black belts as a brown belt. And he's just like, his teammates call him the Rottweiler. He's just like a little like machine basically. So he's been really fun it's been really fun to train both of them. More importantly, I just like really like them as people. I just think, I think when you coach, and you can probably attest to this, it's like, it's fun to like build those relationships. Like everyone in here obviously has a relationship with you today. And I think that's really cool. That's why I'm really like happy to be here. And I'm really grateful that you guys invited me in, because I think that's like the coolest part about having a gym, whether it's martial arts or strength or anything else, is the people you meet along the way. So it's been really fun to work with them as people, like kind of first and foremost. And yeah, those are the two main guys there. I work with another guy named Rehan Mutalib that I've been working with for a number of years. And he's been interesting because he was going through med school when I started training him. And now he's a black belt and he's still competing like on the world stage as a doctor, like as a resident, and managing. And I really like managing training schedules. Like other than being in the gym, like I really like managing all the variables of people's lives and trying to figure out, all right, now's the time to push. Now's the time to pull back, and helping them with that. So it's been good to see him really develop, because like he really has in the past 2 years.
Mark, I'm sorry to cut you off, but when you design a program for everybody, it's not cookie cutter. If you guys have ever had a personal trainer before, or somebody like Mark deal with a professional athlete or anybody, you can't say, okay, Mark, what do I do? They have to know everything about you, everything that you do, because the way that Mateos trains is not the way that 99% of the people in the world are going to be training or should be training. Because they'll get hurt. Exactly. Or they won't be able to keep up with the schedule. So it's always individual.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I was on the phone yesterday with a friend of mine. He has a really great website to fightcampconditioning.com. There's a lot of cool articles on that site for jiu-jitsu athletes and all kinds of combat sports athletes, just home workout. Yeah, Corey Beasley. And we were talking on the phone yesterday, and he trains a lot of UFC fighters. And we were talking about how, like, in some ways, how boring the workouts are that we do with them. Like, it's not stuff people would want to watch because it's just like we're working on really basic, simple movement patterns. But like, that's the point, is that no matter your level, the basics are always important.
No, we want the lightning in the bottle. We want somebody squatting on a yoga ball with a 300-pound barbell on their back while they're balancing on one foot. Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Because he was saying that, like, somebody asked him, like, can you film more of your workouts with XYZ fighter? And he was like, dude, like, we're doing step-ups for 30 minutes. Like, it's not.
They're stepping up on a chair.
Yeah. But, there's a lot of mechanics involved in that. And that's not a knock on the fighters. It's just, it goes to show you that basics always prevail. That's why, like, the earlier question about, like, I squat, bench, and deadlift, and I do this and that. I'm like, those are great basics. The basics always are, like, the best, and really with Marcos and Mateus, that's what we do a lot of,
just like, simple things.
Yeah. With Marcos, I do more like a little, because he's so mobile and strong already. I do a lot more heart rate training with him. And with Mateus, I do a lot more mobility training. So like Mateus is like brutally strong, and it's not like I need to have him come in and like prove how strong he is all the time. It's like, we do a lot of mobility work, a lot of Steve stuff. We do a lot of, we do like what I call like the indicator exercises. So like every sport has certain exercises that you can like there's a high correlation between how well you do in that exercise and like how strong you'll be on the mat, for instance, or like how far you can throw a shot put if you're a shot putter and that kind of thing.
And that goes with getting assessed by someone, by a professional in person, which, Pablo does for a lot of people at the studio. He'll assess people. He always says you need to be assessed first.
Exactly.
Just like for me and Mark, my story. Me personally, I will never put a barbell on my back and squat.
Yeah.
Because of, for me particularly, I have hip injuries, and I had hip surgery. I have metal in my hip, and my hip doesn't go in that way. So it doesn't make sense for me to do that motion if I can't do it correctly. So I do one-legged split squats instead. Like, it still does the same thing.
Yeah. You need, like, the thing is like a lot of times you need patterns in your life of squatting and hinging and pushing and pulling and rotating, but they don't always have to look like the way like Arnold did it or the way like a powerlifter does it. They can look all different ways. And that was Corey's point, is like a step up is like it's a form of a squat and hinge movement. You're putting your hip in the deep flexion and your knee into deep flexion. So like, it doesn't really matter if he has, I'm trying to think of like one of the guys he was working with recently. They don't have to do back squats, but they do need to move that way. So that's the important point in all that. And you're a great example of that. That 100%. There's the squat there, it's like an art, the back squat. So it's like
all of this stuff is right.
Yeah. So you don't have to like, there's some guys I know who are like brutally strong, like 600-pound deadlift, like 350 plus bench press, but they never back squat,
or those guys get on the mat and they feel like a child, like they have no strength for grappling. Just because they can do this really strong doesn't mean that they're going to be strong at grappling.
Yeah.
Like, well, the transfer isn't always there.
Right. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I was actually going to make a video about this today or tomorrow, especially given us all being inside. Like, this is where, and not being able to use the gym or go and do everything that you're normally used to. This is where it gets a little sciencey. So like, I totally understand if you tune me out here, but if you think about what you can actually leverage, and let's first look at jiu-jitsu as a sport, and then what you can actually work on while you're at home. That it's two different mechanisms when you lift something heavy up off the ground versus when you keep somebody like in a guillotine and like hold them there. Like, like from a scientific perspective, if you're interested in this stuff, look up the sliding filament theory of muscular contraction. That is basically what dictates how much strength and force you can put into something. Whereas your lactate threshold, like your anaerobic lactate threshold, is what determines how long you can squeeze something for. So they're two different energy systems. It's two different things in your body that work on that. Well, right now, nobody has the things at home unless you have this awesome home gym in your basement or backyard to make yourself like super crazy, crazy strong. But we do have enough to make our muscles burn and increase our squeezing power. So while you're stuck inside right now, again, this is like another point where I'll give Steve a ton of credit. All of his time static contractions and squeezes and isometric work is all stuff you can do right now, and all stuff that you will.
I'm gonna put a video in our page of Steve's workout. I'm gonna do a workout and I'm gonna put it in the next week or so.
Cool.
And everybody can do that workout. I'm just gonna look off Steve's stuff. I have a bunch of his videos, and then I'll make it like a intro / like a good workout for everybody that they could do. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. It's and I post stuff like that from time to time too. So if you want to check out on
watch Mark. Don't watch me do it. I'm
like, no, you should watch you do it too.
Mine's gonna look bad anyway.
Yeah, but that stuff is stuff you can do at home right now. So like with keeping that as brief as possible, like using science, using intelligent program design, like there you go. That's like some of the best stuff you could do right now. And I think sometimes what happens is like we have so much cool stuff available to us. I know it happens to me all the time. Is that there's so many cool gyms and pieces of equipment and places to go and things to do that like, it's not until it's taken away from you that you realize like, oh, I could still do the basics. Like I can still get better at this. Like, every day I've been doing something that like is those low level, what I call like GPP goals, like general physical preparedness. Like, I've been working on my core a lot. I've been working on like my hamstrings a lot. I've been doing a lot of lunges lately because it's something I'm not great at. So just doing more and more of that stuff all the time.
Cool. We have one more question, and then Mark, then we're gonna stop.
Sure.
Answer this question, then we'll stop. Then we'll show everybody how they can get this free gift from you, because obviously they can use this gift while they're at home now.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Patrick's question is, I work full time, but was thinking about becoming a personal trainer for extra money. What certifications would I look for or try and avoid? I guess look for and or try to avoid. What would you tell them?
Well, if you're going to go and work in a gym or you want to be able to call yourself a certified personal trainer, it's mostly important. Like they're all, I'm trying to choose my words delicately. There's some good ones. There's a lot of okay ones, but all of them get you into a point where you're insurable and legal and whatnot to train. And then really the rest of it comes from experiences and internships and the people you go and seek advice and help from. So I would say go to like the NSCA for their basic personal trainer certification, because that's the bigger body for the people who do the CSCS, which is what I have. And I think the background info is really good there. So I always push people that way. I know there's another one, the American College of Sports and Medicine, ACSM. That's another good one, because I'm trying to make it worth your while too, so you can really learn something while you do it. Because I think a lot of people tend to like cram for these tests and then like kind of forget it all. I would avoid anything that's like way too expensive, because it's probably like a business money grab. Like if it smells weird, it probably is. So I would start with those two. I know the American Council on Exercise, that one is also something that a lot of gyms, if you went to go like work at a commercial gym part-time, that's another good option, because it probably wouldn't be particularly costly to obtain and you could do it in a reasonable amount of time. So I would start there. And because those three, all the ones I listed, gyms will hire you like with that. In other words, like, because their insurance providers will be safe, feel safe having you there. And really certifications, they don't necessarily teach you the most. What teaches you a lot is like going out, and if you can afford it, like take a week or two to do an internship at a gym or with a person you really like. I was fortunate enough that like I got to do that with Steve for like a week, and then it turned into like a job for about 2 years. So that's kind of what I'd recommend. And now, I mean, really one of the best times to do it. Obviously, given our current circumstance, I don't know what waits for us on the other side, but up until now, it's like the gyms are more willing than ever to do that, and providers and exercise like experts and things like that. So it's out there.
Good advice, man. All right. So Mark, let's tell everybody about your gift that you're going to be able to give to them and how they can utilize this thing.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's all right. So I wrote this 4-week program that utilizes only kettlebells and bands. I called it bells and bands. How appropriate. And it's basically, like I said, a 4-week program, 4 times per week. You can do it all. Like I said, all you need is a single kettlebell and a single band. If you have more, that's great. You can totally utilize them, but it's completely free for you guys. So you can download it by, I can give Charlie the link.
Can you do me a favor? Can you send me the link on text right now?
Yeah. I'll send it to you right now.
And then I'll put it in the chat, and then I'll put it into the Facebook group and make sure that other people can get it. Because I remember you saying it's only going to be free for a certain amount of time. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, as long as this stuff is going on. So yeah, this is the time to
go get it now.
To get on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, definitely. So I'm sorry, I'm getting the link right now. I thought I had it up. And all right, so it's going in the chat right now here.
Cool.
And all you have to do is just enter your email and it will email it to you. If it doesn't for some reason, just send me a message on Facebook or Instagram and I'll make sure it resends to you.
Awesome. And Mark, thanks so much for coming on today. Where can people find you? Like Instagram, Facebook? I know I tagged you on Facebook, but where can people find out more about you?
The best place to always go first is my website, DisAlvotraining.com, because you can go from there to just about everywhere else.
Can you post that in the chat too here?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool.
DisAlvotraining.com. I post a lot on Instagram. It gets cross-posted to my Facebook account page. So if you friend me, I'm happy to be your friend on Facebook, but I don't post a lot there. So you'll be disappointed. So yeah, go to Instagram, go to YouTube. We're actually... we've been filming a lot in the past month. And I've been filming workouts, like entire workouts with some of the jiu-jitsu athletes, like kind of all levels. Like there's a couple guys that come in that are like Mateus and Marcos included, but then there's tons of other guys who just train, work normal jobs and come in. And I just kind of show like what my workouts look like. I try to give useful information there. We're trying to put a lot into the YouTube. So, check there and Instagram.
How can people, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I want people to know before people get too antsy and hop off.
Yeah, no worries.
If they want to work with you, you do have different tiers of how they work with you, right? Like they can buy programs online. They can see you personally. You do over phone consultation. Like tell us about the tiers of the way that you work.
Yeah. So if you're in New York City, the best way to do it is to come in for sessions. We do it, by the hour, or you can buy packages. We also do more remote-based training. So it can be entirely remote, where you utilize an app that we've had going for a while now. So it's filled with exercise demos and a whole messaging system within it. And you just get billed monthly for that. And I'll send you workouts to do on your own. And yes, I do also consultations over things like Zoom here. We can do assessments. And yeah, that's the crux of the offering. Yeah.
Cool. I think that's really important for people to know because, especially in the world that we're in today, Mark, like you said, we always think more is better.
Mm-hmm.
We're on this YouTube rabbit hole. We're on Facebook. We see this professional athlete does this workout or they have this DVD, like, I don't want to say a person's name, but he's a very good grappler. And then he puts out a DVD on what he does for a workout. And he's 24 years old.
Yeah.
And he trains 3 to 4 times a day. That training program is probably not going to be good for you because you're not 24 years old and a full-time grappler.
Yeah.
It's good for that person, but it's not good for the 45-year-old guy or the 30-year-old guy who had metal in his hip. who
Yeah.
trains 4 times a week.
Yeah.
So this is where it needs to get personal,
Mhm.
and you need to know what's going to work for me and for my situation.
Right. Exactly. No, I 100% agree. And like the program that I have up for free for you guys, um, that like this is a great example of that. It gives you 4 workouts per week, but you do not have to do 4 workouts per week. You know, you can kind of make it your own. It's like programs you download on the internet, like they're going to get you pretty close if they're done well. But if they're not, in assuming that it kind of matches your parameters, but you know, you need to, individualization assessment is the key. So like if you want to get closest, yeah, definitely hit me up, or I know you mentioned Pablo, or anybody who kind of really knows what they're doing. They'll be able to help you. And one thing I'll say before we go here is, because I know you're not too far from the city, so like, you know, it takes a little while to get here. But one thing I do is I work remotely with a lot of people in a way that we set it up so they come in once a month, you know, because it's easy enough to make the commute once a month to come to the city, so I can see your progress. And then I send you on your way with the program based on what I see. Come back in a month. I do that with a lot of people, especially in the tri-state area.
Cool, man. Well, dude,
Yeah,
thanks so much. Guys,
definitely.
I look forward to seeing you all at the gym when this is all kind of over. And then maybe we'll have Mark at the studio for a special seminar for everybody, if you'd like to do that, Mark.
No, I'd love to. Yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to meet everybody in person. Yeah, that'd be
Cool.
awesome.
We can
It was
definitely do
cool
that.
seeing everybody. I like how you can kind of see a little bit of a view of everybody. It was cool kind of seeing who I was talking to. So thank you everybody for having me. I really appreciate you sticking around to listen, and you're at a great school with a great guy. So and I've seen them all around the world. You don't always end up in those situations. I'm not just blowing smoke. Like, Charlie's a great guy.
Thank you. My heart.
Of course.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you.
Okay, guys. Take care. Have a good one. Peace.
Thanks, guys. Take care.